الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين. أما بعد, Allah SWT tells us in Surah Ali Imran, chapter 3 in verse 144. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وما محمد إلا رسول قد خلت من قبله الرسل أفإن مات أو قتل انقلبتم على أعقابكم ومن ينقلب على عقبيه فلا يضر الله شيئا وسيجزي الله الشاكرين. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not but a messenger. Other messengers have passed on before him. So if he was to die or be killed, would you turn back on your heels to unbelief? And he who turns back on his heels will never harm Allah at all, and Allah will reward the grateful. Now there was no human being, a better human being in the history of mankind more than Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. However, Islam is much greater than the life of any one person. It is the deen of Allah. It is the religion of Allah. Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was but a prophet and a messenger like other messengers before him to deliver Allah's message to us. That's why, sometimes when Christians ask us, they worship Jesus alayhi salam. We don't worship Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We honor him, but we worship Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. So our faith is built on monotheism, on tawheed, that Allah is everything. There is nothing other than Allah. We obey Allah, we follow Allah's orders. Anything that conflicts with Allah's orders, we reject it. So that's what our deen is. It's, we don't follow a person, we follow the creator of everything. So the role of the prophets is just to bring us closer to Allah. And by extension, du'at, people who call to Allah, their job is to get us closer to Allah, to lead us to the way, but we worship Allah. We don't worship anybody else. And religion cannot be tied to a person or a location or a time period or any other factor. Religion is like air. Everybody needs it all the time, every time, in any place, in any country. And it cannot be owned. Air cannot be owned by anyone. It is freely available to everyone who breathes. And that's how Islam is. Islam is, Allah meant it to be free for everyone to accept, and not tied to a single person or a single location or or government or whatever. And Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala raised the believers, the Muslims, to be people of principle. Principles are above individuals. Sometimes when you follow certain scholars, people rise and fall. People make mistakes. But if somebody you look up to makes a mistake, you should not associate that with the faith. You have to make that distinction between the people calling you to Allah and the religion of Allah. Because, Islam cannot be tied to a person or anything. It is the religion of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. And Allah wants the principles that are in it to be above individuals. So we love and honor people who call us to Allah and get us closer to Him, but we don't worship them, even if they were Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is the best of mankind. Now that verse, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam died, it was like his companions were like listening to it for the first time. When it was declared that the Prophet has died, Sayyidina Umar left, they were in the mosque. He got his sword and he says, whoever says he is dead, I'm going to cut his head off. He just went to meet his Lord like Moses did. That was the reaction. But Sayyidina Abu Bakr alayhi salam, he was the closest person to him. He verified that he was dead. And he told them, whoever worships Muhammad, Muhammad is dead. But if you worship Allah, Allah is everlasting. He never dies. So he set them back. And when he mentioned that, Sayyidina Umar said, is this verse truly in the Quran? I mean, that's how they were, they were in shock. And Allah did not meant for Islam to end by the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No, it is the deen of Allah valid for all times. In Sahih al-Bukhari, there was a story that it narrated Ali radiallahu anh, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent an armed group on an expedition. So he put on, as their emir, somebody from Ansar, and ordered them, to follow, to obey him as their leader. So this small group, went out. Something must have happened. They angered the leader. So the leader, told them, gather some bunch of wood. They gathered wood, set it on fire. It was a big fire. They set it on fire. He said, jump in it. Jump into the fire. It's like, no. He's like, didn't the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said to obey me? And my obedience is the same as obedience to the Prophet. And they started, some people wanted to obey. Others held them back. They kept holding each other back. Like we ran to Islam away from the fire. We're not going to go into it. That doesn't make sense. We need to wait until we get back to Medina and ask the Prophet about it. So they kept pulling themselves back until the fire subsided and the anger of their emir, subsided. So when they went back to Medina, they asked the Prophet ﷺ about this incident. He said, concerning the people who wanted to jump in the fire, he said, لو دخلوها لم يزالوا فيها إلى يوم القيامة. Had they entered it, they would have remained in it until the day of judgment. And he told the others, لا طاعة في معصية إنما الطاعة في المعروف. And he told the others, there is no obedience for evil deeds. Obedience is required only in what is good. So the rule is, and this is a Sharia rule, that there is no obedience to anyone ordering you to disobey Allah. The obedience to Allah comes first. What people order you after that, if it confirms with what Allah and His Messenger has said, then yes, you obey. But if it conflicts, you do not obey. Whether it's your leader, whether it's your own parents, whether it's whoever it is, it doesn't matter. There is no obedience to anyone in the disobedience of Allah. So that is the rule. And al-ta'atu fil ma'ruf. Al-ma'ruf is something commonly known by fitrah to be good. Or it is clarified in Quran and Sunnah. You don't need a Sharia degree to know that being good to your parents is a good thing. Being, helping others when they need it is a good thing. Hurting others is a bad thing. You know that by fitrah, because Allah put that nature in us. So ma'ruf is something that the fitrah accepts as good. Go help this orphan. Yes, you accept it because your fitrah matches with it. So yes, you obey in that. But when somebody tells you, go jump over a cliff, no. Because that is not ma'ruf. That's something, that's a big sin. And you don't obey anyone, no matter who it is, in the disobedience of Allah Ta'ala. So the phrase is, I was just following orders, does not hold water with Allah. That's why we as Muslims, we can never serve in a military that is led by a non-Muslim. When they go tell you, go bomb this area and kill everyone that's in it, what are you going to do? If you don't do it, they'll throw you in jail. They may execute you. You cannot follow other people's orders when it conflicts with Allah. And if you do it, whether it's a wife following her husband's orders or a child following his parents' orders, that whole argument that I was following orders does not get you out of Allah's anger and Allah's punishment. He gave you a brain, He gave you a Sharia. He ordered you to only obey Allah and the Prophet in ma'ruf. He did not, if they want to threaten you, fine, let them threaten you. Whatever they can do to you, is nothing compared to what Allah will do to you if you disobey Him and obey them. That's shirk. When you obey others in the disobedience of Allah, that's shirk. So there's another story that one of Sayyidina Umar's governors, he suspected a group of people stole something. And he sent a letter to Sayyidina Umar, say, I cannot prove it, but I need your permission to torture them and to get that confession under duress. And he replied back to him, he said, Ya subhanallah, you're asking me to give you authorization to torture another human being? Will my acceptance or my authorization get you scot-free from Allah's punishment? It does not matter if the Khalifa told you to do it and it's something that goes against Allah's Sharia. Allah will punish you for doing it. So he told him, ask them to confess. If you have proof against them, establish the proof on them. If you don't have any proof, ask them to confess. If they refuse to confess, ask them to take an oath that they did not do it. If they do that, then let them go. He said, by Allah, I would rather that they meet Allah with their crime than I meet Allah with their blood. That's how Islam is. There is no obedience to anyone in the disobedience of Allah. Obedience is only when it comes to ma'ruf, to things that are good, things that Allah has sanctioned. So in summary, adherence to the faith, being a Muslim, is done irrespective of where you are, who you are, what time period you may be, what are the circumstances around you. You live in a Muslim country, in a non-Muslim country, it does not matter. These are all circumstances. Adherence to the faith is adherence to the faith. You do that as obedience to Allah, not to go with the flow and whatever however the wind is blowing today. So a believer is steadfast in all conditions. We're steadfast in good times and in evil times, and we are in evil times. We are steadfast in health and in sickness. We're steadfast at home or when you're traveling. It does not matter. A believer is a believer. It does not matter where he is. Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam was described as a muhsin twice in the Quran. Once when he was in jail, and the other one when he was Aziz of Misr. He did not change. He did not change when they took him, Al-Karim ibn Al-Karim ibn Al-Karim ibn Al-Karim, to be taken as a slave, thrown in jail, being accused of in his honor. Didn't change him. It did not change him. Inna naraka min al-muhsinin, in the jail. We see that you are a doer of good. They didn't know about him as a doer of good. They saw it. They saw it in his behavior. That's how a Muslim is. You stick to your principles no matter who and what is going on around you. If you are the only person in your family that is following Sharia, so be it. You cannot say that, the rest of the community is going astray. Well, I'm just going with the flow. No, you stick to your principles. You stick with Allah's command. And faith should not be affected by circumstances. How many people do you see, for people who travel, women wearing hijab, the second they go into the airport, they get on a plane, hijab is gone. And now they're dressed like everybody else. That type of faith was tied to a society or tied to a geographical location. It was not tied to Allah. Because for somebody who wants to implement, and I'm not picking up on women, that's just an example that we see quite a bit. There are men who are, they act righteous in their community. The second they travel abroad on vacation, they do, X, Y, and Z. That's not what faith is. Faith is not tied to a location or to a person or to a group it is eternal. So we have to follow our Sharia regardless of what is going on around us. And Islam cannot be tied to anything. It is the religion of Allah. And Allah Ta'ala ordained it for us from now till the end of days. It is valid for any time, for any place, for any location, for any circumstance. You cannot say that I live in a time where Islam does not apply. You're accusing Allah for not planning correctly. That's kufr. Islam is more applicable today, or just as applicable today than it was 1500 years ago, and it will be until the earth starts rotating. So there is, our Islam is the deen of Tawheed. There is only Allah. You only have one entity to please, one entity to obey, one entity to follow orders, and that's the entity that created us and knows the best thing for us. When Allah says, cut the hand of the thief, and you don't do it, we see what's happening. Now saying, okay, if you steal more than 900, then maybe we fine you. Go see what's happening in California. Shops are closing because people are going in there helping themselves and leaving. When you go against Allah's Sharia, that's what's going to happen. Allah knows best. And the sooner we realize that everything in Sharia is the best and ideal situation for us, the better we'll be. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لكم فاستغفروه إنه الغفور الرحيم.